Hey guys, welcome to this new video on our channel. If you are interested in getting better in live cash games, please check out the link in the description below. In one of Brett Owen's recent vlogs, he said that he basically never 4-bets tens in a typical 2-5 game. So ask yourself, do you 4-bet pocket tens in a 1-2, 2-2 or 2-5 live cash game? And I think this should show you why live cash games are so different. Because when you play online in a 2-5 game, a lot of 3-betting and 4-betting is going on. And of course, with pocket tens, we have to mix in a 4-bet quite often. And this should show you that live, not a lot of 3-betting is going on overall. When you think about live cash games, they are overall quite passive and a lot of limping and calling open raises is going on. When you play online, you rarely see a limp pot, but in a live cash game it's quite common to limp. There are a lot of limpers. There are also a few VIPs that just want to have fun and see a lot of flops. That's your typical game when you play live, and that's why the game plays quite differently. The question is it correct to never 4-bet tens in this live environment, or should we still go ahead and 4-bet tens from time to time? Well, here we have to go back to villain's threat range and our position. The idea is always when we have position, we are more inclined to call, cause out of position, we have a huge positional disadvantage. And with this positional disadvantage, it's way harder to realize our equity. So when you are in position, so for example, it's MP small blind, MP big blind, something like this, it's definitely fine to opt for a call most of the time. So we open raise, villain 3-bets, we just go ahead and make the call versus a really tight 3-bet range, because there's just no point in 4-betting, because we don't want to get 100 big blinds or even way more in the middle. And villain will also not call a ton of worse, but villain will call a lot of better hands against our 4-bet. So calling in position is totally legit. So let's think about out of position. And out of position, it's a bit different versus really tight ranges. So something like Jacks plus, Ace King. There's again no point in 4-betting. Because what will happen? Our opponent will not fold a single hand from this range, because his range is so insanely strong. And post flop, we are also forced to lose our stack on a low board when he just flats pre-flop. Of course, when the board is like deuce deuce 4, we have pocket tens, of course all the money has to go in, otherwise there's just no point in 4-betting pre-flop. And obviously this should never be your plan, to 4-bet against a really tight 3-bet range. But when can we 4-bet tens? So your opponent needs to 3-bet a bit looser, so he needs to 3-bet with some suited connectors or weaker broadways, because then we have full equity pre-flop. And we need this full equity pre-flop, plus we perform quite well versus a strong broadways, so hands like ace queen or ace king. And this situation mostly happens in steal reseal situations, so something like hijack cutoff, hijack versus button, cutoff button, or yeah, when ranges are really loose, small blind, big blind. But yeah, this happens not so often, right? That you're first and in the small blind in a live game happens really rarely. And in those situations versus a looser opponent, you definitely want to mix in some 4-bets. The upside is that you also have full equity preflop, so villain will not realize all his equity with his airballs. So when he throws a hand like ace-3 suited, he still has a lot of equity against tens, and on a lot of board textures, we will have a hard time to continue with pocket tens. And when villain just calls our 4-bet, his calling range is capped. So he can't have kings or aces the vast majority of the time, because when he has a hand like this, he's usually just ripping it pre-flop. Plus, there's another upside. When we 4-bet, we gain initiative. So now we can bluff our opponent post-flop, and it's not the other way around. Cause when we just call the 3-bet from villain, then villain will bluff us post-flop from the best hand quite often, and there's nothing we can do with pocket tens, cause when there are 2 overcards on the board, it's really hard to go to showdown. So as you can see, a lot of the time, this is just not the case. When villain 3-bets versus an under the gun race, or when our opponent is just playing really snug, we should always opt for a pre-flop call. And that's why overall it's totally fine to never 4-bet tens in a 2-5 game, in some games, but you should be aware that there are profitable situations in which you definitely want to 4-bet tens and not only call wins 3-bet pre-flop. Cause 4-betting is so much more profitable when villain's range is loose enough. Alright, I hope you got some insights now when it comes to 3 and 4-betting pre-flop. When you're interested in more theory stuff, let me know. Stay tuned for more, and I'll see you next time.